All right, looks like we are live. Welcome, everyone. Happy St. Patrick's Day. All right, we're going to get started here. For those on TikTok, go ahead, tap the screen, share the live. We're going to get started. Our topic tonight is dealing with anger and resentment. If you're on Facebook, go ahead and type in hashtag live if you're watching the live. That way I know that you're here with me. And if you're catching the replay, type in hashtag replay so that I know that you watched. All right. So today, like I said, we're going to be talking about anger and resentment and how to deal with that. And if this is your first time coming across my channels, my name is Tina. I am a happiness coach, and I help people deal with things like depression, anxiety, dark thoughts, and help you transition into a happier place. I do this by sharing my experience, my strength, my hope, things that I use, tools that I actually use in my day-to-day life to get myself to a happier place, which some days is much more challenging than others. So, like I said, today we're going to be talking about dealing with anger and resentments and some of the tools that I've used over the years and also recently to be able to help process those emotions and how to deal with those in a very effective way, right? So I'm just trying to adjust the cameras here. I thought I had them and then I bumped them. All right. So if while I'm talking, if anybody has any questions or anything like that, feel free to type those in the chat, and hopefully I'll see them. Depending on how many people are coming in on TikTok, share some love, share some energy. Let me know if this is making sense to you, that kind of stuff, just so that I have some sort of engagement and understanding if what I'm saying is helping. My goal is to be able to help you by providing you with tools that you can implement in your day-to-day life, and you can take these and start using them right away. All right. So, anger and resentment. So, when I have started in my healing journey, one of the things that I became aware of was because of the environment that I grew up in, there was a lot of complaining, criticizing, all of those kind of things that happened on a regular basis. And there was a lot to complain about, a lot to criticize um, with living with active alcoholism, abuse, and all kinds of other things. There were always things that there were always fights going on. There were always snide comments, sarcastic remarks, hurt feelings, all of these kind of things. So there was a lot of reason to be angry and have all of these hurt feelings and feelings of sadness, feelings of depression, all of these things. And it can become very easy to fall into a trap of um, just complaining, bitching, and whining about different things. And one of the best definitions I've heard of whining is actually anger escaping through a very small hole. So when you think of somebody like a little kid that's whining, it's like, Mom, I don't want to. It's like really like high pitched and it's like if you're letting the air out of a balloon and you like pull it really tight, then it's going to be like really high pitched and squeaky and everything. And that's when I think of somebody who's whining, that's what ends up happening. Their voice goes like really high pitched, and I watch for that in myself, right? So a couple of things that I had learned was, first of all, not projecting. Projection is like any of those angry feelings that I had or criticisms that I was projecting them outward. I used to fight with my brother a lot. I used to argue a lot. I still argue quite a bit now. But I am a lot more selective about what kind of things I argue about. And I don't just go off like I used to. And so I've learned over the years by practicing the act of going 24 hours with not complaining, not criticizing, not finding fault with anybody or anybody else, um, other than looking at myself. And so when I am in a situation where I'm forced to, that I can't project outward and I'm just focusing on that one thing. I'm not allowed to bitch. I'm not allowed to complain. I'm not allowed to whine about anything outside of me, of anything anybody else is doing. Because one of the things that ends up happening when you grow up in a traumatic environment is you become very externally focused, and we fail to recognize the powers that we actually have available to us because we grew up in ways where we didn't have a whole lot of power. And so we were always focused on how to deal with other people, how to get other people to do things that we needed them to do to keep us safe. And all of those kind of survival mechanisms kicked in. And in order to start healing, you have to stop some of those survival mechanisms. Hey, Justin, good to see you. I'm doing well. How are you? So, the act of just going 24 hours of refusing to complain or find fault with anybody outside of yourself. No, you're on the wrong TikTok channel if you're looking for a song. And I'm not in the shower, so I won't be singing. um, so I've got no shampoo bottles here. So when you focus on that, it starts to put the focus on you, and then of course what ends up happening is you have to sit with those uncomfortable feelings because you're not allowed to project them outward. So now you have to start to reflect of why am I being so cranky? Why am I being irritable? Why have I become irritable and unreasonable? What is going on with me, right? So we start to put the focus back on ourselves. We start to examine our own thoughts, our own behaviors. And anytime that we are looking at anger, resentment, depression, any of those kind of things, they are all various states of fear. And fear is false evidence appearing real. And everything is either a cry for or an expression of love. So if we are in these angry, resentful kind of states, first of all, anger is a signal that a boundary has been violated and you're not comfortable with it. So it's a fight response, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. And if it's properly managed, it can actually be a force of good, a force for change, and a force for establishing proper value system for yourself, and do the things that you need to do to be able to put up the appropriate boundaries through communication. Okay. When you do that, when it's a small thing, it's easy to deal with. When you let things slide, they build up, and then they start to turn into resentments. So resentments are expectations that you have that have not been properly communicated. And because you haven't properly communicated, people can still continue to do the things that they do, and we start to get resentful. Why don't they know any better? I can't believe they did that. All of those kind of things. When you start acting in those kind of ways, when you start having those kind of thoughts, those are good signals for you to start practicing that ability to, if your feelings are hurt, just for today, don't show that your feelings are actually hurt. You have to look within and find out what's going on with you. Where have I not communicated something that is bothering me? Try not to do this when you are in a very emotional, agitated state. Okay, you want to make sure that you are in a reasonable state to be able to express what it is that's going on. But first, we have to look at ourselves. What part did I play? Even if somebody out of the blue comes up and they smack you in the face for no reason, and you're like, what the fuck, right? Um, we have to look at, well, what part did I play in this? And you're like, well, I didn't do anything to deserve that. Fair enough. When that when you saw somebody going to raise their hand to strike you, did you just stand there and let them do it? Did you tell them to stop? Those kind of things. Now, of course, if you're experiencing physical violence, I don't condone that whatsoever. Protect yourself in whatever ways that you need to, because you do not deserve to be anybody's punching bag for whatever reason. If they cannot control their temper, that is not on you. That is a responsibility of them. We all have our own responsibility to manage and mitigate and control our own emotions by becoming aware of them, becoming aware of when we are having a fear reaction. Okay, so if we are lashing out at anybody, I can promise you, you are in a state of fear, that you are not in a state of love. Okay, because when we are in a state of love, when we are in our happiest state, I mean, we don't run around looking for ways to harm other people. We're feeling good. We're feeling happy. We're happy and content with ourselves. There is no need to harm others. It's only when we feel like we're under some sort of threat, when we feel like we're under attack, whether that's real or imagined, we tend to lash out. And that is not a good thing to do. So managing our reactions is one of the keys to be able to manage our anger and resentment, prevent resentment from accumulating. So resentment usually comes up because there's been multiple times where there's been unspoken expectations, and things end up happening. I've seen this, like a good example in the workplace is, we had some reports that they weren't working properly, they weren't pulling the correct numbers, something had changed in the system, and ever since they made the change, our reports weren't working correctly, and somebody complained about it, and they were like, this friggin' report's not working since they made the change in the system, oh, this is bullshit, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, well, log a ticket and let them know that this is a problem, right? Yeah, I already did that. Okay, great. And it's like a week or two goes by and they're still complaining about the same thing. And it's like, well, what's going on? Well, I logged the ticket, but nobody got back to me. I'm like, well, did you call again? And they're like, well, no, I already logged the ticket. Why should I have to call? Well, because it's your problem. This is something that's affecting you. So expecting somebody else to make it their priority, you don't know what's on their plate. You don't know how many other things that are higher in the list of fires that they're trying to put out on the IT side. So if you don't speak up or remind them about it, then how are they supposed to know? It's probably in the queue, it's just further down. And unless you go back and you explain to them, hey, this is preventing us from being able to do X, Y, Z, and we can't actually move forward with this particular thing. It's stopping production. It's stopping us from being able to pick up loads. It's stopping us from doing our load planning, any of those kind of things. Unless you properly communicate and clearly allow the other person to understand what the impact is, what the fallout is, what the challenges are, and allow them to also communicate back to you where they are at. Maybe they are dealing with something that is so much more challenging that is going to be a problem for a greater number of people, and then you can understand, oh yeah, I do have an actual workaround for this, and I can wait a little bit longer now that I understand what you guys are actually fighting against, that the warehouse system went down, and that's what IT, all hands on deck, are trying to get that system back up and running. Well, now your report isn't so important, right? So, but without that communication, it can be easy to cultivate resentments and cultivate and nurture that anger by believing that, hey, they're doing it to me intentionally, and I can't believe that they aren't being so considerate, and I can't believe that this is taking so long, and all of these kind of things is you are taking offense. So you're taking this energy and you're pulling it in towards you, and I'm like, I'm going to take offense to this, right? So think of that when you start getting upset about things is, are you taking offense? Are you pulling this negative energy onto you, and then cultivating and nursing a resentment? In order for a resentment to grow, you actually have to nurse it. You have to go, yeah, it's kind of like, my precious, like the ring, right? The ring. And you have to nurture that, and you have to, oh yeah, they did this to me because of XYZ. They did this and I can't believe they did. Like if you're saying any of those kind of things, what you are doing is you are nursing a resentment, and you're creating anger and pain inside of you unnecessarily. And so when you are finding yourself in this kind of state, number one is no outward criticism and no projection of those emotions. You're not going to let anybody know that your feelings are hurt. You are going to sit with those yourself, and you're going to sit and you're going to ask yourself some questions of, what is it that I'm afraid of? Well, I'm afraid that they don't actually think that I'm important. That's why they're not doing the report for me. And that's why they haven't fixed my ticket. And that's why they haven't done this. And whatever it is, you have to take a look. Is that actually true? Jura, thank you so much for the rose. I appreciate you. Um, so you have to take a look at what is going on with the words that you're telling yourself, the thoughts that are coming into your mind around the anger, the resentment, the behavior, the why you think another person is behaving the way that they're behaving. Because a lot of times what we're doing is we're running that through a filter of how we actually would behave, or how somebody else has treated us in the past, and we knew that when they did this behavior, that meant this, right? So whatever, fill in those blanks for whatever it is for you in those particular situations. It's important for you to understand that, and it's important to take a look at, was this actually communicated? Did I actually speak up about things? If I haven't, then I have to take that ownership of, I haven't actually clearly communicated what was important to me, or why this was important, or the urgency of things. And I don't know how many times this has happened, and I'm going to give some like business examples just because they seem to be a little bit more tangible. There have been many times where I would follow up with my team and I would say, "Hey, did you get those payments from those outstanding invoices?" And they're like, "No, but I sent an email." I'm like, "Okay, did you set a required timeline in the email as to when you needed them to respond back to you?" "Oh, well, no." So this is where it starts to become important for us to understand, have we clearly communicated what our expectations are and why that is important? And not only do you communicate that, but you also are open to receiving alternate feedback. So, for example, if I say, you know what, I need these invoices paid by end of day Friday, or this is what's going to end up happening with your account, kind of thing. Um, that gives the person on the other end the ability to respond back and say, you know what, I can't do that, or I'm not going to do that because you have actually invoiced me incorrectly and these are not the correct amounts. That's why we haven't paid them, and we need the invoices reissued with the correct amounts on it. And so now that opens up an opportunity to have a dialogue to be able to have a communication with somebody else to be able to say, okay, so you're not going to be able to get it done for this Friday. Yes, I see that the invoices were not done correctly. We're going to adjust them. I've resent them out to you by end of day today. And so if you're not able to hit the deadline of Friday, when can I expect that to be done? And they might say, well, it's going to take me a month to get those done. Okay, so now I understand where they're at, and now I need to understand why do you feel it's going to take a month when these are already outstanding for a long period of time? And they'll say, well, because you're reissuing them, they come into the system as a new invoice, so now I have to wait the 30 days before I can pay them. Okay, that makes sense. So it's a little bit of a system constraint. Now, I could, if I'm able to, I can accept that. Or if I know that that's still not quite good enough, then what I would do is I would counteract that with being able to say, I understand you have some system constraints. Do you have any other processes that, or maybe somebody that you can escalate to so that we can get these payments put through sooner, because technically they were already 90 days overdue, and that's why we gave you the deadline of this Friday. So to wait another 30 days is going to be a challenge on our end, and then our system is going to kick in and it's going to cause these kind of problems for you. So being able to have that ability to openly, without attacking each other, have conversations um, about truly understanding what the problem is and how to come to a mutually beneficial agreement on those kind of things. This is something that I've seen so many times in business where people will end up taking personal offense that, oh, this friggin' vendor, they don't do this and they don't do that and they're just a pain in the ass and they never pay their invoices on time and blah, 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 blah. And I don't know how many times I've come into an accounts receivable situation, and most of the time the reason that the payments are not being paid is because there was some sort of discrepancy. There was something, either there weren't written documents, there was unclear communication, something like that. So a lot of times being able to clear up the communication is the easiest way to clean up an accounts receivable. So that's a bonus tip for anybody that's looking for business stuff. And I know we were talking about anger and resentment, but this stuff builds up in businesses as well. And then a lot of hurt feelings start happening, and then there's attitudes and resentments, and then this starts to trickle out into all areas of the business. And there's been a lot of times where I've had to come in and I have to like diffuse these bombs, right? And understand what's going on and come to a happy conclusion. Because the other thing is even the companies that are paying the invoices, they don't want this stuff outstanding. They don't want this stuff on their books. They want this cleared up as much as possible, because having to touch those things multiple times is a problem on their side as well. So now, had I gone in and I just dropped the hammer and just went, no, these are 90 days overdue and you have till this Friday or we're cutting this off, right? And I just like, and technically I'm in the right, but there's also another saying, you can be right or you can be happy, right? So I'd much rather us both be happy and that we're working together collaboratively to come to some sort of resolution for the situation, that we're not at each other's throats. I'm not here to be your enemy, ever, ever. I'm here to help solve the problem. And if you choose to look at me as the enemy, that's not something I am here to do. So being able to communicate properly with people. Now, sometimes people don't tell you these things that are going on, right? But you can sometimes feel an energy, and you can feel when other people have anger and resentment. And so sometimes what will happen is sarcasm is a good one. Is sarcasm will start to come up, and you'll get these little digs. people will give these little shots, right? And sarcasm, the word sarcasm has its root. Oh, excuse me. I knew I had to do something funny. um, so sarcasm, the roots of the meaning of it come from I don't know, Greek, Latin, or something like that. I don't know. I'm not very good at with those kind of things. But thank you, Gary. Um, it it means to tear the flesh, and it's like, so when I first heard that, I thought, because I used to be sarcastic all the time. That was just like normal stuff, like sarcastic jokes. Now there's a certain you have to have a certain type of friendship in order for that to play off well, but you also have to take a look at when are you using that, because a lot of times there's a lot of truth in jest. And so when somebody's saying something sarcastic, it's equivalent to that whining energy where it's that anger escaping through a very small hole. It is those little digs that they're giving you. And so one of the things that I started doing once I became aware of this is, number one, I stopped my sarcastic behavior, or at least in the beginning, I started to become aware of it, and I would catch myself doing it. And if I caught myself doing that and being sarcastic with somebody, I would immediately make amends for that. I would immediately correct myself, and I would go back and I would apologize, and I would say, and they were like, they thought I was overreacting. It's like, relax. Like, and I'm like, no, this wasn't for them, whether or not they were upset. This was me being in an alignment with my character and how I wanted to operate, because the thought of using words to physically tear somebody's flesh, that was too graphic of an image for me to hold in my mind, that I just wouldn't do that, right? Now, if I have a good relationship with you, I might give you like a little sarcastic, like joking dig, but I expect that back, and we kind of already have that banter, right? And I actually take it as a sign, if somebody gives me a little shot. Um, if somebody is too formal, too polite with me, I'm like, they still don't trust me. They haven't relaxed. They haven't let their guard down. But if they're like, if they'll make fun of me or do something like that, then I know, okay, we're on good terms here now, right? They've relaxed enough. Because I've seen I've seen that so many times in business. I don't know if it's the energy that I give off or what, but they'll like make sure that they don't swear around me, and I'm like, oh, you have no fucking idea how much you don't have to, hold your language with me. You can't offend me. I've worked too many years in transportation and logistics. There's no way. I've offended truck drivers. Okay, I've offended very salty, seasoned men. And they're like, damn. Um, yeah. So um, I always find it amusing when people are trying to watch their language around me, and they're like, trying to tippy toe, and it's like, oh, like they're worried that they're gonna offend me in some sort of way. And it's like, will you just fucking relax? It's like, it's all good, man. It's all good. Like, and so that's how I know that now we're good working friends now, right? So and I would do like little jokes and stuff like that, even with my vendors, even after we sorted through some of these accounts receivable issues that we had, and why I gained their trust is because I was always very first and freely the one to admit when we did something wrong. It's like, because a lot of times, and I've seen this in companies, they won't admit to the mistakes that were made. They will not say, oh, the system went down, oh, this happened, that happened. And I'm like, I get it. You want to look professional, but at the same time, people know when you're full of shit too, that things don't add up. And even if they don't catch it right away, they're going to catch it eventually. And now there's going to be this sense that they can't really fully trust you. And that is going to end up causing them to hold back rather than having open communication and collaboration. And then you end up having, there's, it might just be plexiglass in between you, but it's now blocking the energy. You can still see each other, but now it just doesn't quite feel the same, right? You got your COVID protection gear on or something like that. And it's just not the same. And that starts to, these are small ways that it can start to erode the relationship, whether that's business, whether that's friendship, whether that is partnership, whether that is your spouse, your sibling, your family member, it doesn't matter. There are these little things that can start to creep in. Um, Anger, trust issues, they're all fear related. And when you nurse them or you get all of your exercise jumping to your own conclusions about what somebody else's behavior meant, then that it becomes a problem as well too, because now we're making our own assumptions, and assume means ask out of you and me, right? When you spell that out. So that ends up causing all kinds of dynamics. And being able to talk openly, talk freely, and respectfully is the key, right? Um, and so another thing that I've done with the anger and dealing with anger and resentment is sometimes it because of the environments that we grew up in, sometimes it's just habitual. And so a lot of times in the very beginning, I had to use fake it till you make it, right? So I'd be pissed off. I'd want to say all kinds of sarcastic stuff, but I had to learn to just STFU, shut the fuck up. Don't say anything, just hold your tongue and sit and wait. And I noticed that when I did that, and even though I I didn't authentically feel it at the time, and I was resentful and I was angry, I didn't act on it. And because I didn't act on it, now I didn't add that fuel to the fire and cause the explosion. And so being able to learn to sit on that and wait allowed me to take ownership of those emotions, and I started to filter through and understand what it was that I was doing that was contributing to the situation. And I had to start looking at different things. It's like, okay, is this something? I'm so mad I could rip up a Kleenex. That's funny. Uh, um, so I had to learn to not react to certain things. And I also had to apply the act the way that you want to be, and soon you will be the way that you act. So I had to start, instead of being critical and judgmental and all of these things, I had to learn to be patient. And I was faking it at first. A lot of times I was faking it. Um, and and I had to learn this new behavior. I had to condition myself to behave in a better way that was more aligned with the results that I want. Because if I look at somebody who is nothing really phases them, nothing really gets to them, they're calm, they're cool, they're chill, they're like, and a lot of the best leaders I've ever looked up to are the ones that, no matter what problem was thrown at them, they were like, yeah, it's all good, we'll figure it out. And I had this happen. I was on a committee one time, and I made some mistakes. I screwed up pretty bad. I ended up losing our guest speaker, and just because of ignorance and youth. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I meant well, but I was a derp. So I screwed up. I made mistakes. And the speaker technically did overreact and was angry out of context. However, I remember I thought, oh, I'm going to get kicked off the committee and nobody's going to want me on the team. And I was all ready to accept my punishment. And I'll never forget that the lead chairperson of the main committee that we were kind of co-hosting with, um, they and this was the first time I had ever experienced this, because normally I was used to even the slightest, tiniest mistake raked over the coals, criticized heavily, like, how could you, you're a terrible person, terrible human being for even making a minor mistake. So that's kind of what I was used to. I made a major mistake, so I was expecting the worst to happen. And he had responded, he's like, you know what? We can't change what's happened. All we can do is move forward from here. And I was like completely shocked at that. And I was like, and I will never forget that. And I was like so impressed by the example that he set that I adopted that as my way of operating, because I was like, oh, this feels so much better than what I had experienced previously. And sometimes all it takes is somebody to show a good example. Now, I know he was upset, he was worried, because now we had to scramble within a couple of weeks, and we took months trying to get that speaker. And so now we had to scramble. It turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because the original speaker that we had wanted, when we tried to get them, they weren't available. And but the timing of this, we had reached back out to them and they were actually available because they had a cancellation. So it turned out that we got the original speaker that we wanted because of my screw up. Now, if he had gone and raked me over the coals over that, and then ended up, we got our good speaker, um, like, he would have destroyed that relationship. There would have been a lot of hurt feelings, and everybody else around on both committees would have watched how he operated and seen how he behaved. And that wouldn't have looked good on him. It wouldn't have looked good on me. And it would have um, caused problems with the morale of the team. Everybody else would have now been so afraid to make any mistakes. And so these are things that it's important to understand why we feel the way that we feel. And then also, even if we are angry, even if we are upset, being able to control how we respond to that, how we treat others, is all within our control. And because of the example that man set for me, um, and the funny thing is, I can't remember his name. I can kind of remember what he looks like, but I can remember how he made me feel. And I respected how he responded in that situation so much, of that even if I'm upset that somebody's made a mistake on my team, and there's been times I've done this wrong, and I've done the worst, where I've raked somebody over the coals for something that I shouldn't have. And so I know what it feels to be on both sides. So it's not like I'm trying to be, hey, I got it all figured out. I've only got some things figured out because I've learned what not to do. Um, so yeah, understanding how do you want to react in a situation? When you think of some of the best leaders that you've ever experienced, and how they've treated you, how they've handled problems, how they've handled challenges, um, have they behaved in ways that you can look up to, that you can actually respect, you can admire their way of behaving, how they handled things? And then also, when you take those kind of things, at the end of the day, when you look at yourself in the mirror, can you be proud? Can you respect how you have handled things today? So even if you felt angry, you felt depressed, you felt anxious, you felt irritated, you felt resentful, you felt negative, even if you felt those ways, where can you give yourself credit for being able to at least manage the emotions, that you didn't do any outward harm and you also didn't do any harm to yourself, right? So when we are extremely critical and angry at ourselves, that is also a punishment, and we don't want to do that, because what we're doing is we're hurting ourselves. And if we continue down that thought process and not have kindness and compassion for ourselves, eventually we're going to get to the point where we feel justified because we're hurting so badly ourselves. Now we feel justified at lashing out at somebody else. This is why it's so important to do this inner work and to be mindful of what kind of thoughts are running through our head, and to be able to slow down long enough to be able to understand what are those thoughts. And if you are walking around like a bear with a sore ass and you are just miserable and you're cranky, and you have to ask yourself why, what is going on? This, and treat yourself not like what the fuck's wrong with you, like not like that. No, it's like, hey, this isn't like you. You're normally really good, you're normally really cool, respectful, you're really, kind and loving and all of these things, like all these good qualities, but you're not in this state. What's going on with you right now? And ask that to yourself, right? Ask that to yourself. What's going on? What's got you upset? What's got you concerned? What's got you afraid? Because the only reason that you're angry and you're resentful is you're afraid. And when you really start to look at that, and then you start to look at ways, how can I give myself the support that I need? What is it that I need in this moment? And sometimes it might be, you know what, I got a shit sleep last night and I need to get to bed early tonight. Or, you know what, I haven't eaten and I need to eat, or I've only eaten junk food today, or I've only done this, or I'm feeling a lot of pain, or I'm sore, or whatever it is, right? Really understanding what's going on with yourself so that you can give yourself the kindness and compassion that you deserve. Because when you can treat yourself with kindness and compassion, you are going to respond that same way with other people when they are experiencing those kind of challenges. And when you start to do this, you you can find inner peace, you can find inner happiness, um, because now you're operating in your own best interest. You're operating, and I'm not talking selfish, I'm talking about operating in your own best interest. So sometimes that means giving yourself a kick in the butt, going, hey, the only reason you're cranky and miserable is because you didn't do some of the things that you said that you were going to do, and you fucked around, you didn't do things, and now you're annoyed with yourself. And now you want to take that out on somebody else? No. That's where you have to take responsibility. You have to take ownership of that and kind of go, oh, yeah, I am a little bit annoyed. And instead of us dealing with our own feelings about ourselves, what ends up happening is we will project that energy onto somebody else. And shit rolls downhill. So usually it's somebody that we have a bit more authority over, somebody who's a little bit more timid than us, somebody who isn't as strong as us, and we end up being mean to them, and then we feel guilty for that, and then guilt is an energy that will seek out punishment, and then we feel vindicated. See, I tried to do whatever and look what happened to me, right? So now we feel like justified, And that is kind of like a whole cycle of a victim mentality, and it kind of keeps us trapped, right? So this is why it's important to pay attention to our internal dialogue. What is going on in our own minds, in our own voice? Where is that coming from? Is that learned? What is it that we need to do to kind of understand what's happening with us, right? Where where is this fear energy coming from, and how can I provide myself the loving support if I had, and if maybe you can't quite kind of see how you can do that for yourself, and it's like, okay, you might be thinking things along, well, if this person would just do this, then everything would be fine. Whatever that this thing is. So, example, if I was pissed off that, you know what, I'm mad because I have to wait for to eat my dinner because every time I go to make dinner, um, they're late coming home. And you know what? I'm tired of having an overcooked dinner. I'm tired of having a cold dinner or having to reheat it or having to serve two dinners and blah, 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 blah. So you get resentful about those kind of things because one, you're angry. So the first time it happens, you're angry. You might say something, you might not. And maybe you huff and puff. You kind of have an attitude, right? And so now this other person's picking up the energy. Yeah, sometimes life gets in the way, exactly, right? So these things, they start to happen, but then our reaction, our responses to it contribute to the situation. And we only have control over our own behavior. We can't really control other people's behaviors. So we have to pay attention to what we're doing to add to that and what are we doing to contribute to that. And then also being able to be willing to do things like, you know what, I'm going to eat my dinner right now because it's hot, it's ready, it's fresh, and I don't have to reheat it. And you're not here on time, so I'm just going to eat my dinner. When you come home, you can heat yours up. And now there's no resentment, there's no expectation, there's no having to wait. Now, if the other person gets bent out of shape because they can't believe you're eating dinner without them, then that is something that they're going to have to talk to you about and open up dialogue, open up communication. Either way, it's a win, right? So this is an example of little things that you can do that end up causing some resentments to build up because of unspoken communication and you not taking care of yourself. Going back to what I was saying, if you are upset and you're finding, oh, I can't believe that they can't come home on time, whatever it is, you're criticizing somebody else. If it's that important to you, A, communicate. If they don't change, what are you going to do if they decide not to change that behavior and they still continue to come home late because something else came up at the office and they're not capable of setting boundaries with their boss or whatever it is? Are you still going to allow that resentment, that anger, that fear to fester within you and disrupt your peace? Or are you going to be brave and do what it is that you need to do for you to keep your inner peace? That takes some courage. That takes, maybe somebody else is going to get upset with me if I do that. So these are the kinds of things, but protecting your peace is so much more important because if you continue to operate in those resentful manners, then eventually you're going to blow up, then you're going to lash out, and you're going to hurt somebody else, then you're going to feel guilty, and then that guilt will seek out punishment. And then you will have that heaped on to you. So this is why I always say there is no room for hate in my heart, because as soon as I see that I'm like that, I will definitely not lash out. And if I don't deal with it, and if I don't do that inner work to find out, hey, what the hell's going on with me, then eventually I'm going to get irritated, I'm going to get miserable, I'm going to take it out and I'm going to project that energy on somebody else. Why? Because I'm denying how I'm truly feeling and I'm not really looking at it. So that energy has to go somewhere. So it's going to get misdirected and it's going to get projected onto somebody else who maybe doesn't have the strength to fight that back, right? And so this is why it's really important to start looking. And I can promise you, the stuff that has disturbed my inner peace the most has nothing to do with the external. Okay, I have grown up in some pretty chaotic environments, and every time my peace is disrupted, it's because of my thought processes and what I'm thinking about things, and my inability to face my fears, my inability to give myself the love and support that I actually need and deserve. And so, because of that, I now look inward first when there are challenges, and I sit with that irritableness and I sit with that unreasonableness, and I try to give myself the patience, the tolerance, the compassion that I would as if I was my own best friend. And I do my best to support and figure out what what the true challenge is, because this way of being is not my natural state of being. My natural state of being is happy, content, loving, kind, patient, considerate, understanding, all of those kind of things, right? Respectful. All of those things are all of our natural states of being. We all want love and we all want to give love and receive love. And there's times that the illusion of fear gets the best of us and we believe it's real. And when we believe it's real, no different than a child having a nightmare, we act out on those kind of things. And that's where we end up creating misery in our own lives. And it's not something that's easy to take this kind of ownership. Everybody thinks that living love and light and all of this kind of stuff is easy. It is not. It is not easy. But I can tell you it's worth it. It is definitely worth it. Um, because when, just like that guy who showed me an example of a better way of being and how much better that felt, just that one little example was life changing for me, that I implemented that way of behaving. People will pick up our examples, right? And so being able to be that example of healing, because that was very healing for me, because I was used to being like raked over the coals, like for small things, and this was a big thing. And he gave me grace in that moment. He gave me patience. He gave me understanding. And that was really, really powerful. And seeing that example, being on the receiving end of that, was extremely healing. Healing to the point where that became something I wanted to be. So be the example of what we want to see in this world, right? Giving ourselves an out of, well, I acted that way because of this, or I acted that way because of that. At the end of the day, we still have to take ownership of when we've hurt others. And if we don't, even if we hide it from other people, we still have that internal guilt energy. And that energy is going to seek out um, the punishment that that energy needs to be relieved. Do I smoke cigarettes? No, I used to. Why do you ask, Smitty? Do I have that sexy smoker's voice? Is that what's going on? I needed a sip of my tea. I'm curious why you were asking. Do you do cigarette sales? Softly quiet now. All right. So, protecting that internal peace, um, and when you can do that, you can have chaos going on all around you, and it's not going to matter. You are going to be seen as one of those people that provides a sense of calm, a sense of confidence, of reassurance, of peace. Why? Because you have done the work for being able to work on that internal piece of how you operate. And that is so much more important. And nothing will destroy your peace faster than your own internal criticism of yourself. And this is why it's so important to really monitor that internal voice. What is it that you're saying? And give your fears an avenue, a voice to be able to speak. Now, I'm not saying, blurt that out to everybody. I like to write those things down. Sometimes I don't write them down. I just am able to make those connections because I've done it so many times that I'll sit and I'll think, I'll reflect, I'll understand, okay, okay, you know what? Oh, this is what's going on. Okay, I was being negative here. Okay, I'm being hard on myself here. Okay, this one I actually earned. I'm mad at myself because I didn't follow through on something I wanted to do and I said I was going to do it. Okay, I'm going to go do that now, right? So being able to understand and make those connections is really important to keep from beating yourself up as well. Um, so these are different ways that it all ties in together, how to handle anger and resentments within ourselves, with others, in our relationships, and also in a business situation. So I gave you the example of the accounts receivable and how I approach that with being able to apply these same principles um, in every aspect of your life. These are tools that you can start to use today, and just by the act of stopping yourself from no outward criticism, just go 24 hours. You're not allowed to find fault or criticize anybody or anything outside of yourself. You have to sit with those feelings and analyze them within yourself of what's going on with you. So, guys, if you hopefully you found this helpful tonight. Thank you so much for the engagement and the interaction, the questions, and the comments in on TikTok. I really appreciate that. Really helps me. Even if you are watching the videos after the fact, if you want to put in comments, questions, concerns, um, feel free to do that. If you jumped halfway in and you're like, I'm not quite sure what Tina's talking about, I will be posting the replay of this up on my YouTube channel, which is Coach Tina B 125. You can find it there, and or you can check me out on Facebook. They're on my feed there. Okay. And you will also see the artwork. So this various artwork that I have here that there are postings. I use it for the thumbnails on my YouTube videos, and there are links if you do want to purchase merchandise or prints or a magnet or a gift card or something like that. You can do those. There's a link there for the various artwork. Okay. And guys, I will be back on again tomorrow night. Do you guys like this later start time? Although this is a little bit later. 11:30. I normally come on around 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but I've been doing a few other things. But I think now with the daylight savings time and some of the other things that are going on, I live in a beach town, so maybe doing it a little bit later might be a better thing for me. Might work out so that I can go out and socialize, get out and you know meet people in person and stuff. That would be good. Yeah, and oh, so the artwork I was going to say, and this is kind of why you see a little bit of pink because I had the black light glowing here. So you're following for certain. Thank you, Gary. Um, Appreciate you. And yeah, so check out the YouTube channel. Come back tomorrow night if you have any questions, comments. Why do you think I have diabetes? McDone with it. Cool glasses. Yeah, I know they are cool, aren't they? Thank you. They're two-toned, right? So, guys, I'll be back on tomorrow night. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything you want me to do a training on, let me know and I will do up a training. Otherwise, we will see you again tomorrow. Have a great night. Bye.